The single lamp above the operating table cast a circle of yellowish light on the bloodied flesh. Everything else was swallowed by the darkness of the underground bunker, where the air was saturated with the smell of chemicals and death. The controller placed the body on the metal table, then lay down on the adjacent one. The Stalker was still breathing, hoarsely and intermittently, though the emission should have killed him instantly. Something about this body was wrong. Something useful. "So, what do we have here?" rasped the doctor, whose hands had long stopped trembling from such procedures. He didn't look into the controller's eyes when the latter realized he would become the donor. The shriek of the drill cut through the laboratory's silence, drowning out the screams. The smell of burnt bone mixed with the metallic taste of blood. In the semi-darkness, something important was passing from one body to another, something that was meant to change the zone forever. When it was all over, something new lay on the table. Something that would soon make everyone forget what safety meant in the cursed lands around the sarcophagus. Morning always began the same way for Terrace. Even on the coldest days, he would step out onto the porch of his small house, located on the outskirts of the village, a couple dozen kilometers from the exclusion zone's perimeter. A bucket of ice-cold water would be overturned in one motion onto his strong body, covered with old scars. The water ran down his gray hair, his wrinkled face, his shoulders, his entire body, carrying away the remnants of nighttime nightmares. "I thank you, Lord, for the new day you have granted me," Terrace would say, lifting his eyes to the sky. "For your light, for your air, for the life you have preserved for me." At 50 plus, Terrace looked much older than his years. Strong, sinewy, with unusually clear eyes the color of a stormy sky. The locals considered him a strange hermit, about whom various rumors circulated. Some said he was a former military man, others that he was a scientist from secret laboratories, some whispered about his connection to the zone. And though the latter was true, no one knew Terrace's real story, the story of a man who had died and been born again. In the house, which he had repaired with his own hands, everything was clean and simple. Homemade furniture, a pot-bellied stove, an old radio, and a bookshelf. And among them, a worn Bible, which he had found in this very house, hastily left behind by the previous owners. It had become his guide to the new world in which he was destined to live after the zone. After his water procedures, Terrace would dry himself with a rough towel, get dressed, and prepare a light breakfast. A piece of black bread, an egg, and herbal tea. He ate unhurriedly, as if meditating, and after breakfast, as usual, he would open the Bible. Suddenly, the morning silence was broken by a knock at the door. Strange. Usually no one came to see Terrace at such an early hour. He sensed the visitor even before they knocked. Anxiety, fear, worry, the emotions were transmitted so clearly that Terrace involuntarily winced. "It's open," he said. On the threshold stood Margarita Pavlovna, his nearest neighbor, a pleasant woman with a kind but now troubled face. "Terrace Makarovic, forgive me for the early intrusion," she began, nervously wringing her hands. "But I don't know what to do at all. My caustic. He's planning to go to the zone with his friends. Can you imagine? To the zone." Terrace slowly nodded, inviting the woman to sit at the table. He knew Kostya, a 15-year-old teenager with a difficult character and a desperate gleam in his eyes. His father had died under mysterious circumstances 3 years ago, and the boy had changed greatly since then. They're planning a whole expedition there. "For artifacts," he says, continued Margarita Pavlovna, accepting the cup of tea that Terrace silently offered. They've been watching videos on the internet, making up call signs for themselves, playing that stupid computer game about the Chernobyl zone. They think it's some kind of adventure, but it's death, Terrace calmly finished for her. It's death, Margarita Pavlovna. The woman sobbed loudly, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes, and gave way to her emotions. Please talk to him. Maybe he'll listen to you. You know about those places. Everyone in the village says you've been there. Terrace looked out the window. His gaze seemed to extend far beyond the horizon, to where the zone began. Where are they planning to go? They want to set out this evening. They're gathering at the old farm. 4 of them. Terrace nodded. What's your son's call sign? Margarita looked up questioningly. You said they made up nicknames for themselves. Oh yes, Wind. His nickname is Wind. Call sign, Terrace muttered. I'll talk to them, but I can't promise it will help. At their age, prohibitions only fuel interest. What should I do? Margarita exclaimed in despair. I'll try to help. I'll find words to make them understand. The old farm on the edge of the village had long since fallen into disuse. The rusty building with peeling paint had become a gathering place where local youth came to escape parental supervision. The damp autumn air hung like a heavy shroud, saturated with the smell of rotting leaves and burning wood. The sky was covered with leaden clouds. Wind stirred scraps of plastic on the rusty sheds, and this sound resembled someone's cautious, creeping breath. 4 boys sat in a circle among the farm ruins. Their faces, illuminated by the dim light of a flashlight, seemed pale, almost waxy. They were trying to build a fire, but the wet wood only smoldered, choking them with acrid smoke. Missed again, grumbled the tallest one, throwing an empty matchbox into the darkness. Let it all burn, muttered the second, rubbing his frozen hands. Can't light it? That's understandable. Too damp. The voice sounded too close, too unexpected, right behind their backs. Muffled, hoarse, as if filtered through a layer of ash. The boys jerked as one, as if hit by electricity. The youngest, Vitka, cried out, short, childish, almost shrill. His eyes widened, pupils becoming enormous, like black holes sucking in all the world's horror. His fingers clawed convulsively at the ground, driving frozen dirt under his nails. Serega, on the contrary, squeezed his eyes shut, turning away sharply, as if not seeing meant it wasn't there. His body hunched, became smaller, less noticeable, like a small animal hoping the predator would pass by. Before them stood a huge man in an army raincoat. His face wasn't visible, hidden deep under the hood. His hands were obviously also hidden under the raincoat. The moon backlit his figure. This made the entire armless, faceless figure, which made no further sounds, look ominous. Fear paralyzed the boys. They seemed to have stopped breathing, just staring as a face slowly, reluctantly emerged from under the hood. Gray, damp matted strands of beard. Deep wrinkles like cracks in dried earth. And eyes, not just eyes. In the darkness they gleamed with some special shine. The dull gleam of horror and death. The man calmly crouched near the stacked wood, hunching like an old crow on a charred branch. His raincoat rustled like the skin of some prehistoric creature. Hands appeared. Slowly, carefully, the hands extracted something from a pouch hanging on his belt. And at that very moment the air above his palm rippled with heat distortion, as if space couldn't withstand the temperature. Darkness instantly retreated. A fireball. It was ugly, not smooth, not perfect, but bumpy, as if molded from molten slag and ash. Cracks on its surface pulsed with a dull crimson light, like lava breaking through thin bark. Sometimes something brighter flashed in these fissures, and then it seemed that something was stirring inside. The man placed the orb between the wet logs. At first nothing happened. Then, a quiet, wet pop, like a bubble of boiling water bursting. The wood didn't catch fire. It sagged as if under an invisible press, and their cores turned to black ash in seconds. The fire didn't lick at the wood, it devoured it, leaving holes with melted edges. And only then, after this, real flames flared up, the wood crackled familiarly. Warmth came from the fire, long-awaited warmth. "We need to talk. I'm your neighbor, your mother asked me to come." He pulled off his hood so the boys could see the uninvited guest. They recognized him. It was Kostia's neighbor. "Come to talk us out of it?" "Well, what do you think? You're not a stranger to her." The old man extended his palms toward the fire. "We're going anyway. We have to. Right, guys?" Kostia, a tall, thin boy with an unruly shock of blonde hair, glanced at his friend seeking support. He even nudged the nearest one, Leka, in the ribs. "Right," mumbled his close friend Leka. "We need artifacts." The friends weren't really listening to Kostia's conversation with the old man. They were fascinated watching the magical workings of the artifact. "Fine, I won't try to talk you out of it. Anyone can see you've already decided. So, why did you come then?" "Well, I had to try to dissuade you. I promised your mother." "Where did you get that orb?" Timka suddenly asked. "From there," the old man answered hollowly, nodding toward the zone. "You've been there?" The boy's eyes lit up. "I have." "Us too," the most spirited one perked up, a chubby kid in a cap. "We've been to the zone like 50 times already, maybe more. We know all the stashes there." The old man raised an eyebrow, studying them. "How's that?" "Well, in Stalker, the second one laughed. "It's a computer game, everything's exactly the same there. We know where the artifacts are, where the snorks prowl, where the anomalies open up." The old man chuckled, as if he'd heard a stupid joke. "So where do you say the artifacts are hidden?" he asked, and barely perceptible mockery appeared in his voice. "Everywhere," the third one got excited. "In Agriprom under the slabs, at the army warehouses, in the hangars, and in the Dark Valley." "There are none in the Dark Valley," the old man interrupted. The boys exchanged glances. "What do you mean none?" There's only psi radiation and corpses." The old man reached toward the fire, and light danced on his wrinkled face. "A game is just a game. Real life is more complicated. I'd say, more frightening." The fire crackled, casting long shadows on the farm ruins. Somewhere in the distance, from the direction of the zone, came a long, inhuman howl. The boys fell silent. "You're trying to scare us," Leka snorted. "We know where the gaps in the perimeter are. And we have a map." He patted his backpack. "And a detector," added Jenka. "Homemade." Tara smirked, and there was something in that smirk that made all four feel uneasy. "Show me the map," he requested. After a moment's hesitation, Kostia nodded to Leka, who pulled a folded sheet of paper from his backpack. Terrace unfolded it and studied the hand-drawn terrain diagram with marked passages and anomalous zones for some time. Clever, but here, look, is a blind dog den. You haven't marked it. And here, under the bridge, there were always electros. I wouldn't go there. The territory you've marked as safe is actually one of the most dangerous in this sector of the zone. The boys grew quiet, exchanging worried glances. How do you know? Vadim asked suspiciously. Terrace folded the map and returned it to Lekha. I know because I was there. And survived only by miracle. Were you a stalker? Kostia's eyes lit up with interest. I was, Terrace answered briefly. And I saw many who didn't become one. Because they didn't live to see the morning of their first day in the zone. We just want to find artifacts, Kostia said quietly. To sell them. Make money. Help Mom. Terrace nodded. I know. And that's a good desire, to help loved ones. But the zone isn't the way, Kostia. Not the path. Besides, you still need to sell an artifact. To manage it. And that's no less difficult and dangerous than finding it and carrying it out of the zone. We'll risk it anyway. Risk is a noble thing. Alright, what do you have with you? Terrace suddenly changed the subject, looking over their backpacks. Show me your gear? Without waiting for permission, he crouched down and began going through the contents of Jenka's backpack, which was closest. So, kin food, matches, flashlight. Bolts for checking anomalies? Jenka nodded, clearly proud of his knowledge. Not enough bolts. You can never have too many bolts. He moved to Lekha's backpack. First aid kit without anti-rads, sleeping bag designed for summer picnics, folding knife. Terrace smirked, straightening up. You wouldn't even go into the forest with this. The damp evening air seemed to grow colder. Weapons? Terrace asked, looking at the teenagers. What do you have against zone creatures? The boys exchanged glances. Vadim showed a sharpened hunting knife. Lekha, something resembling a homemade slingshot. Jenka spread his hands, meaning nothing. I have some, Kostia said unexpectedly. He went to the bushes and pulled out a long object wrapped in canvas. Unwrapping the fabric, he displayed a professional crossbow with an optical sight. Wow! Where did you get that? Terrace was surprised. Kostia swallowed, and his voice became quieter. It was my father's. He was a stalker. Heavy silence fell. Terrace looked at the boy intently. Your father was a good stalker, he finally said. I think I heard about him. You knew him? Kostia stepped forward, and hope sounded in his voice. Possibly, Terrace answered evasively. But why do you ask? Your mother said he died. Kostia lowered his gaze, then resolutely raised his head. He didn't die. He went missing. Went into the zone and never returned. But they never found a body. And you want to find him, this wasn't a question, but a statement. Kostia nodded, and tears stood in his eyes. I thought I wouldn't tell the guys. Thought they'd just come with me for artifacts. He turned to his friends. Sorry I didn't tell you right away. But I need to find my father. His friends looked at him silently. Lekha put a hand on Kostia's shoulder. You're an idiot, Kostian. We would have gone with you anyway. The drizzling rain that had continued since morning seemed to have calmed down. Terrace looked over the soaked teenagers, their faces full of determination. Rain in these parts was a constant companion, as if the sky itself mourned those who went into the zone and never returned. When were you planning to make the run? Tomorrow morning. Well, it's almost morning already. He looked up at the sky. It's getting light. Terrace looked at the teenagers and made his final decision. All right, will you take me with you? I definitely won't be a burden. And unlike you, I know not only how to get there, but how to get back out. As an argument, his hands extracted from the depths of the raincoat an enormous pistol. Whoa! The boys jumped up. Desert Eagle. A real one. Can we touch it? Know the saying? Don't trust your gun, horse, or wife to anyone. But still. He unloaded the pistol and handed it over. Just be careful, don't drop it. Will you show us the entrance to the zone? Vadim asked distrustfully. Of course. Both the entrance and the zone itself. Oh, Kostya, leave the crossbow. Hide it in your stash again. You won't need it today. So, ready? Terrace stood up and brushed ash from his knees. Well, since you're so determined. He surveyed the group of 4 teenagers. The portal is very close. Literally 10 meters from here, behind those bushes. The boys exchanged distrustful glances. What portal? Lekha snorted. Are you completely? How do you think I got here? Terrace smirked. Walk 30 kilometers on foot? At my age? Kostya was the first to stand up. Will you show us? I'll show you. But I warn you once more, it's better to stay home. What awaits you there? The old man shook his head. You wouldn't even dream it in nightmares. We're ready, the boys chorused. Terrace sighed heavily and headed toward the blackberry thickets. His eyes flashed for a moment in the darkness with a strange silvery light, but the teenagers didn't notice. They were talking too excitedly among themselves. Here, Terrace stopped in front of a thick wall of thorny bushes. Need to throw a bolt so the anomaly manifests. Jenka readily pulled a metal bolt from his pocket and threw it into the thickets. The air instantly lit up with a bluish shimmer. The bushes seemed to part, revealing a passage beyond which only darkness was visible. Wow. Vadim whispered. Last chance to change your minds, Terrace said sternly. We jump one at a time. And remember, whatever happens there, stay together. Kostya was the first to step toward the portal, the others following. Terrace brought up the rear. When they had disappeared one by one into the shimmering darkness, the old man quietly said, Forgive me for this, boys. But otherwise it won't get through to you. The fall was brief but painful. Kostya hit his back hard against the wet ground and lay there for several seconds, trying to catch his breath. The air was heavy, saturated with the acrid smell of decay and metal. Somewhere very close by, water was dripping. Guys, he called out hoarsely, getting to his feet. Guys, where are you? Here. Lyoka responded from somewhere to the left. It's pitch black. Jenka turned on his flashlight. The beam of light snatched ruined concrete structures from the darkness, covered with strange reddish moss. The walls were riddled with cracks from which glowing liquid oozed. Where's the old man? Vadim looked around. Taras Makarovic. Kostya shouted. The echo bounced off the walls multiple times, but no answer came. Maybe he fell somewhere else? Jenka suggested. Suddenly, somewhere deep in the tunnel, a prolonged, inhuman howl echoed. The sound was so eerie that chills ran down the boys' spines. "What was that?" Lyoka whispered, convulsively gripping his homemade slingshot. "I don't know." Kostya pulled several bolts from his pocket. "But we'd better get out of here. Fast." They moved down the corridor, lighting their way with the flashlight. The walls were covered with some kind of slime that glowed with a dim greenish light. The air grew heavier, making it hard to breathe. "Do you hear that?" Vadim stopped. Behind them came sounds, as if something large and heavy was dragging its paws across wet concrete. The sounds were getting closer. "Run!" Kostya commanded. They rushed forward through the tunnel. The flashlight in Jenka's hands danced wildly, snatching glimpses of rebar fragments and gaping holes in the walls from the darkness. A roar came from behind, angry, hungry. "Faster!" Lyoka shouted, but stumbled over some debris and sprawled on the floor. Kostya turned to help his friend up and saw it. Something the size of a bear but with 6 legs was crawling out of the tunnel's darkness. Its muzzle was disfigured by mutations, bleeding holes gaped where eyes should be, and its mouth was full of razor-sharp teeth. Saliva dripped onto the floor, hissing and corroding the concrete. "Lyoka, get up!" Kostya grabbed his friend's hand and pulled him up. The creature was approaching, and with it, others began crawling out of the side tunnels. Small, nimble creatures the size of dogs but with long tails and glowing eyes, jerboas. They ran along the walls and ceiling, emitting piercing squeaks. Jenka hurled the flashlight at the blind dog. The light flickered, illuminating an entire pack of mutants. The flashlight went out, smashing against the wall. "There are many of them!" Vadim screamed. "Too many!" In the pitch darkness, they ran blindly. Kostya could feel something clawing at his jacket, the sharp claws of jerboas. He swatted them away without stopping. Lyoka cried out in pain. One of the creatures had managed to slash his shoulder. "Don't stop!" Jenka shouted. "There's a turn ahead." They veered into a side corridor. It was slightly brighter here, gray light filtered through cracks in the ceiling. But their pursuers weren't falling behind. Moreover, new creatures appeared ahead. Humanoid beings with long tentacles instead of arms. A strange sight. They just stood there, blocking the path to the exit. "Back!" Kostya yelled, but turning around, he saw that the way back was already blocked by monsters. "We're trapped!" Vadim cried in panic. Suddenly a door opened in the wall, and a quiet, saving voice came from within. "This way. Quickly!" It was Tara's. The boys didn't hesitate and rushed toward the door. The old man pulled them inside and slammed the door just as the first bloodsucker reached the threshold with its tentacle. "They've surrounded us," Kostya said, gasping for breath. "We won't hold out here for long," Tara's replied grimly. "There's an emergency exit, but the path to it is dangerous. Controllers patrol those corridors." "Controllers?" Jenka asked. "Worse than all the other creatures," the old man explained briefly. "They control minds. They can make you shoot each other or walk straight into their jaws." The door shuddered under the impacts. Plaster began falling from the ceiling. "We're going out through the ventilation," Tara's decided. "One at a time. And whatever happens, don't look the controllers in the eyes." They broke out the grate and climbed into the narrow ventilation shaft. Terrace went first, followed by Kostya, then the others. The narrow metal corridors were stuffy and dark. "Quiet," Terrace whispered. "They're nearby." Through the grate below, Kostya saw it, a controller. A tall, thin creature in rags, with a huge bald head covered in pulsing veins. It walked slowly down the corridor, turning its head from side to side. Suddenly the creature stopped and raised its head. Its deathly pale eyes stared directly upward, to where the teenagers were hiding. "Don't look," Terrace hissed. But it was too late. Vadim met the creature's gaze. His eyes instantly became empty, lifeless. "Go to him." Vadim spoke monotonously and began breaking the grate. "Hold him," the old man shouted. Kostya and Lyoka grabbed their possessed friend by the arms, but he fought with inhuman strength. The controller below emitted a piercing mental scream that made everyone's ears ring and heads spin. "What are you fussing with him for?" Terrace hissed, and with a sharp, whipping blow, knocked Vadim unconscious. The boys were stunned. Terrace picked up the limp body and dragged it along. "Faster, faster. Let's get out of here." The boys picked up Vadim and dragged him through the ventilation. Kostya could feel an alien voice sounding in his head, forcing him to stop, to turn back. He clenched his teeth and crawled on. Finally, they climbed out of the ventilation onto the roof of the building. Vadim came to, but looked shaken. "What happened to me?" he asked. "The controller asked for your ticket," Terrace explained, rubbing his hand. "Almost find you. Next time, before going to the zone, don't forget your travel pass. And for the future, this applies to everyone. When I say lie down, it means lie down. When I say run, it means run. We do everything clearly and quickly. A good Indian is a fast Indian." "Wait, there are Indians here too." "They weren't in the game," Vadim mumbled in confusion. Everyone couldn't help but smile. From the roof, a view of the entire area opened up. Ruins stretched everywhere, factory buildings, pipes, tanks. Packs of snorks, humanoid mutants moving on all fours, prowled the ground. "We need to get to that building," Terrace pointed to a tall tower a kilometer away. "There's a passage to another sector there." "How will we get through those creatures?" Lyoka asked. "Fast and quiet," the old man answered briefly. "But first we need to get down." They began carefully descending the fire escape. The metal creaked under their weight, and every sound seemed deafening in the silence of the dead city. Halfway down, the ladder broke off. Below, about 5 meters down, the roof of a neighboring building was visible. "We'll have to jump," Terrace said. He jumped first, then Kostya. Lyoka followed. Jenka hesitated. "Come on," Kostya whispered. "Don't be afraid." Jenka jumped but miscalculated the distance. He fell on the very edge of the roof, clinging to the gutter with his hands. The metal began to bend. "Hold on." Kostya rushed to help. But it was too late. The gutter tore away with a crash, and Jenka fell screaming. He landed in a pile of scrap metal with such noise that the echo rolled across the entire area. "Jenka!" Vadim shouted. "Quiet!" Terrace hissed. "Damn! They heard us." Indeed, growling, squeaking, and howling began coming from all directions. First the snorks appeared. They ran crouched to the ground like beasts. And from manholes, something else began crawling out, long, snake-like creatures with human heads. This is something new. Run! Terrace shouted. They rushed across the rooftops, jumping from one building to another. Faster! Kostya shouted, helping the lagging Lyoka. They reached the edge of the building. Below gaped an abyss, 20 meters to the next roof. Too far! Lyoka shouted. Over there! Terrace pointed to wires stretched between the buildings. Along the wires. You've lost your minds. Vadim protested. But there was no choice. A snork jumped from the roof of the neighboring building. Terrace shot with his pistol. The creature howled and crashed down. Quickly! One at a time. Terrace was the first to grab the wire and begin crawling across. Kostya followed him. The wire swayed, hands slipped from sweat. Below, in the depths of the abyss, something stirred and growled. Kostya reached the middle when he heard a scream behind him. Turning around, he saw Lyoka slip from the wire. The guy managed to grab an electrical cable with one hand, but wouldn't last long like that. Hold on! Kostya shouted, but at that moment, a pack of creatures crashed onto the roof behind them with a roar. Vadim, who was crossing last, got scared and let go of the wire. His scream echoed off the walls. No! Kostya screamed. Don't stop! Terrace shouted. Or we'll all die. Kostya struggled to reach the other side. His hands were shaking, tears stood in his eyes. Vadim had died before his eyes. Lyoka was still hanging there. Makarik, do something. Kindergarten, honestly. The old man took off his raincoat, dropped his gear. He handed the pistol to Kostya. He grabbed the wire and crawled back toward Lyoka. You know why they say, whoever served in the army doesn't laugh at the circus? Terrace asked cheerfully when he reached Lyoka. No? Well, today you'll find out. Hold on to me. How? Tenderly, naturally. Arms around the neck, legs around the torso. Faster. I can't. I'm scared. As you wish, I'm not planning to die today. Kostian is waiting. With you or without you, I crawled back. My hands aren't government property. Come on, hero, come on. Lyoka clung to the old man like a baby monkey. A minute later they were lying on the roof. Well, Makarik, you're amazing, Kostya whispered. No, I've gotten too old for such trips. Old? Why are you whispering? The whole zone already knows we're here. And they can't reach us here. Hello, zone. I'm back. Yes, it's been a long time since I was here. By the way, familiar roof. This 5-story building is the Agriprom Administrative Building, if my map is correct. And here on the second floor, there was a stash in the storage room. A good stash. You have your own map? Lyoka was amazed. Will you show us? Of course I do. Right here. And Terrace tapped his temple with his index finger. Suddenly the sky turned crimson. Thunder rolled from the approaching emission. Oh! I'd almost forgotten about this. There's going to be an emission soon. Move, guys, move. We've got 2 minutes, no more. The sky always came first. It changed color from the usual gray to an alarming orange, as if dawn was breaking over the zone in reverse, not sunrise, but the end of the world. The guys didn't immediately understand what was happening. Just a minute ago they were peacefully lying on the warm tar roof. Kostya was still staring at the horizon where the sky pulsed with strange flashes, and Lyoka was frantically rummaging through his backpack, looking for his map. Only when the air filled with a low, visceral rumble did it hit them, an emission. They went down into the building and ran to the stairwell. 3 floors down seemed like eternity, though it took only a minute. The steps under their feet vibrated, plaster fell from the ceiling like white dust. Somewhere far away, but getting closer, a sound was building, as if a giant beast was tearing through the concrete jungle of the dead city. "That's it, 2nd floor," the old man shouted. "We won't make it to the basement now. Look for a room without windows. Find a storage room." 30 more seconds. "Here!" Lyoka yelled. They rushed in, slammed the door and pushed an old cabinet against it. The building began to shake slightly. In complete darkness, Terrace turned on the flashlight hanging from his gear. Where the cabinet had just stood, a stash was revealed. "The stash is untouched," Terrace muttered. "But that's for later. Sit down, kids, right on the floor. It's going to shake something fierce now." Terrace pulled a small box of pills from his pouch and handed them to the boys. "Help yourselves." The frightened kids each took a pill. "Radio protector," the old man announced matter-of-factly. "To survive the emission in comfort." He held out a flask. "Come on, men, here's to all the good things. To the health of all the conductors of trolleys, buses, and trains." "Just kidding. Pure water. Wash it down and quickly lie down on the floor, face down. The fun's about to start." The boys obediently stretched out on the cold concrete. Lyoka was trembling either from fear or cold. Kostya gripped his backpack so tightly his knuckles turned white. "If we survive, I'm throwing out the computer along with this damn game." Kostya didn't have time to finish cursing. The wave hit them. First, sound. Not just sound, but a physical force that passed through walls, through bodies, through the very bones. A low, growling bass that made teeth ache and ears start bleeding. Then, shaking. The building swayed like a ship in a Force 9 gale. The storage room shuddered, shelves crashed, whitewash fell from the ceiling. Somewhere in the walls concrete cracked, metal creaked. It seemed the 5-story building would collapse any moment, burying them under tons of debris. Kostya pressed himself into the floor, squeezing his eyes shut. His heart pounded so hard it seemed ready to burst from his chest. A wild headache pulsed in his head, red spots danced before his eyes. But the old man lay calmly, almost relaxed. Only his lips barely moved, counting seconds. He knew an emission lasts exactly as long as it lasts. No more, no less. All that remained was to wait it out. Thunder rolled over them in waves. First distant, then closer, more powerful, more deafening. As if the sky was tearing apart and the earth was answering with its own scream. At some point it seemed the world was ending, right here, right now. The storage room walls let waves of anomalous energy through. The air became thick, viscous, hard to breathe. Metal objects glowed faintly in the darkness with greenish light, and ears rang as if capillaries were bursting inside the skull. "Hold on," the old man wheezed. "Just a little more." Lyoka sobbed from fear and despair, covering his face with his backpack. Fortunately, no one could see or hear this in the roar. Kostya, clenching his teeth, still bit through his lips, blood spurted. Time dragged endlessly. Seconds seemed like hours. And suddenly, silence. Not immediately, gradually. First the loudest sounds died down, then the roar quieted, finally the shaking stopped. The building creaked for a few more seconds, settling, and then dead silence reigned. Terrace was the first to raise his head and listen. "That's it," he said quietly. "It's over." The guys didn't believe it right away. Lyoka still lay pressed to the floor, and Kostya smeared blood across his face. Only after several minutes did they dare to move. Is it always like this?" Kostya asked in a trembling voice. The old man smiled without joy. "What's with your face?" "Lips?" "Nothing serious. I hope you brought wet wipes with you." "No." Terrace pulled half a roll of toilet paper from his backpack. "Why don't I smell anything? You guys didn't soil yourselves?" "Seriously?" "Well, men. I respect that, surviving your first emission, staying alive, and not shitting yourselves. That's cool. Now you're real stalkers." Terrace, seeing their depressed state, cheered them up as best he could. No joke, surviving such stress. And the death of friends too. "Here," Terrace shoved the roll of paper at Kostya. "This is for your lips, instead of tissues. Don't rub it with dirty hands." "Well, let's see how well the goodies left by X-ray have kept." "What X-ray?" Kostya asked and winced from pain. "Yeah, there was such a stalker. In a past life. The food can be thrown out. Even the canned goods are swollen. First aid kits will do, bandages will work. And what do we have here? Whoa, weapons." Terrace pulled out a rifle and carefully examined the barrel. "Well, the rifle, I'm telling you right now, is mine. It's fitted for me. Look at this, oiled. And this." The old man delved deeper into the crate and began pulling out barrels one after another. "Here's an N94 Abakan, a beast of a machine. The first 2 shots go as one, excellent accuracy, but the recoil afterward is wild. A weapon for experienced hands, a novice will just waste ammunition. And this," he lifted a more elegant assault rifle, G36. German precision, light, excellent accuracy, but fussy about dirt. There's constant dust in the zone, so make sure you don't let it get clogged." Terrace set aside the assault rifles and pulled out 2 pistols. "PM, Granddad's gun, simple as dirt, you can find ammo anywhere. And this USP, American, powerful, but expensive ammunition, you'll think twice about every shot." Kostya and Lyoka silently examined the arsenal, not believing the weapons were real. "Well, what are you standing around for? Take your pick." The boys began loading the weapons with expert knowledge. "And what kind of game is this you have?" the old man muttered, watching the guys' professional actions with bewilderment. "We're ready," Kostya reported. "Just need to zero them in." "Well, let's go. Let's look out the window." Under the windows lay the skeletons of tanks and several trucks. Everything was covered in rust and strange growths. In the truck beds lay several snorks, basking in the sun, recovering from the emission. "Well, gentlemen, here are your targets. Perfect greenhouse conditions. Like a shooting gallery. But let's keep it reasonable. Save your ammunition." The boys switched to single-shot mode and opened aim fire. The snorks instantly leaped from the truck beds and hid. However, one still remained lying there. Well, one between the two of you, that's still a result, Terrace smiled. Yeah, the rifles are heavy. Awkward when you're not used to it. Well, yes. It'll be easier in the game. Suddenly, Kalashnikov rifles began chattering from the direction of the trucks. The boys jumped back from the window openings in fright. Oh! The defenders of the offended mutants have appeared. Why are you hiding? Those are zombified soldiers. They shoot chaotically. They can't even see us. Mutations damage their eyes. Kostia peered out. Indeed, 3 soldiers, moving with that specific, unhurried zombie gait, were spraying lead rain from their rifles like from a hose. Well, why are you confused? Aimed volley, before they disappear from the line of sight. Kostia aimed, but after a few seconds lowered his weapon. I can't. They're people. They're alive and helpless. Like blind kittens. Is that so? Nazar pondered. You don't want to become a killer. That's the right choice. The choice of a real man. Let me shake your hand. Terrace stepped forward and shook Constantine's hand. You know, I like Oscar Wilde's quote about this. The quiet sound of a whip suddenly interrupted Terrace. With his left hand, he sharply pressed the artery on his neck. But the relentless blood burst through his fingers with force. Terrace went limp and collapsed to his knees. How stupid. A bullet from a blind kitten. His hand weakened, his gaze dropped. Well, I'll be. How stupid. Then he sharply squeezed Constantine's hand. Listen to the order. Hide the weapons in the cache. Keep only the PMs for yourselves. And take my eagle. Now it's yours. Don't reveal yourselves. Don't engage in battle. Move north, through the swamp. There you'll. Terrace collapsed face first to the floor. A pool of thick, dark blood began efficiently spreading across the concrete. Kostia threw down his rifle, pressed against the wall, covered his mouth with his hands, and sank to the floor. He stared frantically at the old man's body, convulsing in hysterics, making some incoherent sounds. Nearby, frightened Lekas sat on his knees, shaking Kostia by the shoulder and screaming directly in his ear. Is he dead? What did he die from? How will we find our way home without him? Will we find it? Will we find it? Won't we find it? Won't we find it? Won't we find it? We should have buried him. Left him like a dog. Should we go back? No. We move forward. Kostia and Lekal walked north. Grimy, exhausted, already thinking poorly and having completely lost control of the situation. They simply wandered like 2 small, exhausted gerbils. The swamp greeted them with fetid breath and a damp grip. Every careless step threatened to sink into the quagmire. Lekal walked ahead, feeling for solid ground with the stick he had picked up back at the abandoned farm. Kostia trudged behind, periodically stumbling and cursing through his teeth. The sun hung somewhere high, but only rare rays penetrated through the dense tree crowns. The air stood heavy, saturated with swamp vapors and something else, that very smell of the zone that couldn't be mistaken for anything. Lekas stopped, wiped his forehead with his jacket sleeve. Listen, maybe we should rest? I'm all ready. No, Kostia shook his head. Grandpa said not to stop. Remember what he said about swamps? There's all sorts of nasty stuff here. But fatigue was taking its toll. Steps became increasingly uncertain, attention scattered. Lekka was no longer checking each section of path so carefully, and Kostya stopped looking around. They just walked mechanically, thinking only about reaching solid ground. It seemed the swamp would never end. Suddenly, somewhere behind them came a quiet splash. Kostya turned around but saw nothing, only the swaying of reeds and circles spreading across the water. And then a semi-transparent creature jumped out of the swamp slime. The bloodsucker was enormous, about 2 meters tall with long arms, covered in slime and algae. Its eyes glowed with a dim red light, and from its mouth, full of needle-like teeth, bloody foam dripped. Before attacking, it became visible and made a threatening attack sound. It lunged at Lekka, who didn't even have time to turn around. "Run!" Kostya yelled, pulling the PM from its holster. Lekka jerked to the side but stumbled. The bloodsucker missed, crashing into a tree trunk, but immediately turned for a new attack. Kostya fired. The bullet went wide. His hands were shaking, the sight swam before his eyes. "Here, you bastard," he shouted, backing along the swampy path. The creature darted between them, not knowing whom to attack first. Lekka ran, jumping over tussocks, Kostya following. The bloodsucker gave chase, splashing swamp water. Lekka was running ahead when suddenly the ground beneath his feet treacherously gave way. He fell waist-deep into the quagmire and screamed, "Kostya! Help!" Kostya turned and saw his friend thrashing in the viscous slime that was sucking him deeper with each second. And the bloodsucker was already very close, its fangs gleamed in the swamp twilight. "Hold on!" Kostya shouted and ran toward his friend. But the creature was faster. It jumped on Lekka, who was struggling in the quagmire. Kostya saw the fangs sink into his friend's shoulder, saw him scream, saw blood color the swamp water. Something snapped in Kostya's head. The world narrowed to the size of the front sight. He ran almost point blank and began shooting. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bullets tore into the bloodsucker's carcass but didn't do much damage. Kostya threw aside the PM and pulled out Grandpa's step eagle. He cocked the hammer, and at that moment the bloodsucker turned around. Their eyes met. The bullet passed through its eye and blew out the back of its head. After the PM, the eagle's shot was so powerful that Kostya lost his balance and fell backward, dropping the pistol. He immediately jumped up and dove headfirst into the swampy slime, where bubbles on the surface showed where Lekka had gone to the bottom. It was too late. He couldn't even feel for him. He surfaced, greedily gulped air and suddenly realized he was trapped himself. There was no support under his feet, nothing to grab onto either. Kostya turned his head around. That's it. This is the end. How could this be? The swamp was inexorably creeping toward his mouth. Kostya closed his eyes. An image of his mother appeared. The closest person to him. "Forgive me, Mama, how many times I hurt you, didn't hear you and didn't listen." "Hold on, son," Mama whispered, "he's close now." Kostya opened his eyes. A stalker stood in the clearing, examining the picked-up pistol. Kostya lunged upward, was above the slime for a second, but that was enough to shout. The next moment he went under the slime head first. Another moment later, a strong male hand grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up. "Who are you?" Kostya asked. The stalker removed the keffiyeh covering half his face. Kostya's breath caught. It was the haggard face of a middle-aged man with gray in his hair and deep wrinkles. But the eyes, those gray eyes he had known since childhood. "Papa?" Kostya whispered. "Hello, son," the man said quietly. "I've been waiting for you for so long." Kostya rushed to his father. They embraced, and the boy began to cry. For the first time in the last 3 years, he wept openly, like a child. "I thought you were dead," he sobbed. "Mama said." "Mama doesn't know the truth," his father said gently. "I couldn't return. The zone changed me. I'm no longer the person I was." "I don't care," Kostya exclaimed. "The main thing is that you're alive. We can go home, to Mama." His father shook his head. "I can't, Kostya." "But you must. The zone is no place for you. Go home, get married, have children, live a normal life." "But Papa." "No buts," his father said sternly. He pulled a small bundle wrapped in cloth from his backpack. "Take this. This will be enough for you and Mama to live comfortably." His father placed the bundle in the patch pocket of Kostya's jacket and fastened it. "Don't lose it." His father smiled. "X-ray will help you." "What X-ray?" His father pulled a silver pistol from his belt. "Whose is this?" "There was an old man with us, but he died from a stray bullet." "Who?" "X-ray died from a stray bullet?" "Don't make me laugh. He'll outlive us all. Listen to him, he knows a lot about the zone and what lies beyond it." Somewhere in the distance, a roar sounded. His father tensed. "Bloodsuckers," he said. "They don't travel alone. Get up, it's dangerous here." "We can run away," Kostya exclaimed. "That's exactly what we'll do. About 50 meters from here is a portal. Run." The ground became increasingly solid. It was clear the swamp had ended. Father and son ran to some reinforced concrete structure. In front of it, a sewer well gaped like a black hole in the ground. There was no manhole cover. Time to say goodbye. His father hugged his son tightly. "Come on, Dad, let's go together." Kostya began sobbing again. "Go," his father shouted. "Behind you is the well, it's a portal. Jump, don't be afraid, jump." The sound of an approaching monster forced the stalker to push his son away forcefully and fire a burst from his rifle. When the creature collapsed, his father rushed to his son, who was lying in hysterics, scooped him up, lifted him, kissed him. "I can't, son, I haven't existed for a long time. Take care of Mama," and with these words, he threw his son into the well. The last thing Kostya heard was rifle fire. Kostya fell with a cry onto damp grass next to an extinguished campfire. Around him sat his friends, alive and unharmed, but silent and shaken. "You're alive?" he exclaimed. "You're all alive?" "Alive," Lekha answered gloomily. "But I don't understand what that was." "Some kind of nightmare," Jenka mumbled. "Such a real nightmare." The old man sat by the fire, silently smoking a hand-rolled cigarette. "What happened to us?" Kostya asked him. "What happened?" the old man replied imperturbably. "You were about to jump into the portal, and then sleep overcame you all. You fell asleep on the spot. Got chilled, apparently. It's understandable, damp and cool. But you wound up by the fire, so sleep came over you." The boys exchanged glances. Could it have been just a dream? But it was so real, Vadim mumbled. Dreams come in all kinds, Tara's noted philosophically. Well, since everyone's had their sleep, let's go to the portal. Why? What do you mean, why? We were going to the zone, to collect artifacts, chase mutants. The boys recoiled from the old man in unison. Oh no, the boys protested. No, Kostya said firmly. Not for anything. We want to go home, Lekha added. Changed your minds? Well, that's your business, Tara's grumbled. Go on then. Morning's coming soon. When they reached Kostya's house, the boys silently went their separate ways. No one wanted to talk. The mood was depressed. What a thing to dream. Kostya lingered on the threshold. Taras Makarovic, he said quietly. Did you really know my father? The old man looked at him attentively. Then he tapped his fingers on the pocket where the bundle lay. Of course. The artifact was there, real, tangible. So it wasn't a dream, was it? He whispered. Tara smirked. What difference does it make? The main thing is you understood what your father wanted to tell you. He said you would help sell it, Kostya said quietly. I'll help, Taras nodded. But let's not do it today. It was a hard night, need to get some sleep. Taras Makarovic, who are you? Taras frowned. The same kind of stalker as your father. No, you're not an ordinary stalker. Listen, boy, Taras pondered. Well, all right, I can't tell you everything, as you understand. Have you heard of Laboratory X18? Of course. They conducted experiments on people and animals there. That's right. I ended up there too and became part of an inhuman program of human experimentation. People are still being kidnapped for that laboratory. And you could have been, if you had ventured into the zone. And this night, yes, they crossed me with a controller there. I can control human consciousness. You were, well, simply put, under hypnosis. But don't worry, everything was real for you. So there's no point in going there to make sure that gerbils bite painfully. So you're a mutant? I'm human. And my call sign is X-ray, the stalker answered sternly. After thinking a bit, he continued, listen, there are so many mysteries in the world. Look here. Taras pushed open the gate to his yard. Come in. They walked along a path decorated with flowers on both sides. Taras took out a knife and began cutting them, gathering them into a bouquet. Here's one of nature's mysteries I don't understand. Why women are so mystically in love with flowers. And for such a little bouquet, they're ready to forgive any sin. Don't believe me? Here, take it. Your mother didn't sleep all night. Do you know how many gray hairs appeared on her head overnight? How many tears she shed? She's about to give you a thrashing with your father's belt. But you give her this little bouquet. And be sure to tell her, well, you know what to tell her. You're a good son. Go on, run home. God be with you.